So the topic of medicine as a calling, as opposed to medicine as a profession, is something which has been ringing in my heart for maybe a couple of decades. And I've realized that medicine is going away from becoming a calling, and we are losing the art of actually practicing medicine as something you are dealing with human beings, whereas it's now focusing more on the science and it's become an industry, healthcare. So I hope that through this talk we would be able to find some relevance. Before I start, I'd just like to tell what I do. Very often I'm asked that question: what do you do in endocrine surgery? Well, I do thyroid, parathyroid, adrenal, and endocrine pancreas, and I don't do the pituitary or the sex organs or any other, or the pineal gland, which other people ask me. We also do breast cancer and breast diseases because that's part of our work. And this is some of the kind of operations and patients who we see. So we are a high volume center at Vellore and take care of about 2,000 odd patients in a year, which includes surgery for thyroid, surgery for breast, which is a bulk of disease. And the rest of it would come in the others. And when Ashish gave me this invitation and asked, would you be able to speak on this topic? I was attending a webinar by this Columbia Business School, and they were highlighting the power of storytelling. And so the topic was narrative thinking, why it's critical in business today. But more importantly, I think it's business in the art of medicine today, that we are able to tell stories. We are able to actually convey stories to prospective medical students as well as junior doctors to keep the art going. And I hope storytelling will not fail me by the end of this session. In the outline, I would like to speak about a legend who is the father or the forerunner of the specialty in our institution, and then speak about the legacy which we have inherited and the legacy which we are building to pass on to others, and the league we aspire to be in the specialty as well as in training individuals who come to us. And finally, I'd like to end with personal stories of life lessons I have learned through my journey as a medical student, as a postgraduate, and then finally as a consultant. And so with this, I would start with the legend. And many of you may know him. He is Dr. A.S. Fenn. He was, I have not seen him. When he was in his heyday, I was possibly in my junior school or early days in a primary school. But this legend, I've heard so many stories about him from my mentor, who was his mentee. And Dr. Fenn was an exquisite surgeon. I've heard about the space at which he operated. He, in fact, could actually open the abdomen with one single stroke with an incision, and which, if it was a right subcostal, it often always also included possibly a small nick on the liver, because that was how definitive about his incisions he made. And not only was he a very fast surgeon, he lived in a time when people had to thread your needle, and there were very few nurses who could keep pace with him with the surgery he was doing. And there were very few assistants who could keep pace with him. And Dr. Nair, who was also on this meeting, was one of such person. And he was such a phenomenal surgeon that he used to take about 10 to 12 minutes to do a thyroidectomy and 15 minutes to do an adrenalectomy. And that was how he was known. There's an aura around his name, even today in the surgical circles. He was an expert clinician. The erstwhile M ward, which was the private ward, had a floor which had all of his patients admitted for workup. They used to just come from far and wide in this country, get admitted with no workup done, or it was the duty of the registrar and the residents to work this patient up and be ready with it next morning and tell all the results without even looking at the chart. And that was his high expectations. Many wilted and felt by the wayside, but those who stood by his, withstood his training, turned out to become really phenomenal clinicians themselves. And more importantly, he had an approach of teaching. He had, the right horses for the right courses. For undergraduate, his approach was different. For postgraduate, his approach was different. For junior surgeons who were with him, his approach was different. And his teaching skills was par excellence. And I think we in the department have inherited that of passing that skill on. And Dr. Nair, who was my mentor, was a teacher who was also taken after him. And finally, I must say, he was extremely far-sighted, because the specialty of endocrine surgery is unheard of. But in the 60s, he was a gentleman who actually decided that endocrine surgery needs to be looked at as a specialty of general surgery. And I'll show you what he did, shortly, about how far-sighted he was in terms of making the specialty something which needs to be pursued. And we are extremely grateful and indebted for what he did. And this was his registers. You can see that one registers from 1961 or 1967, I think. These registers are still with us. And he used to send people on a train to various parts of the country. Follow-up data was collected. And he used to get the data collected, entered in this register. And I know that Dr. Nair maintained this register, and we received this when we became faculty. And I must say that this was something really phenomenal and very, very visionary to have that kind of an approach. So the lesson learned from this individual was, I quote John Wooden. John Wooden is a basketball coach in the US. He died in 2010 at the age of 94. But John Wooden was a very successful coach, but never went on to professional basketball coaching and stayed in the college circuit, because he wanted to mentor people and he wanted to leave behind his own personal example. And his quote was, "There is no powerful leadership tool than your own personal example." And Dr. Fenn, I must say, was one who actually did that. And this lesson, which I've learned from, this part of being, the importance of the personal example at the workplace is so important, that people look up to you, not look up to you to the words you speak, but look up to the way you live. And that brings me to the legacy. The legacy is of, this is Dr. Fenn and Dr. Nair, I think in the UK, when they went for some meeting. But Dr. Nair was his understudy. He came in as a total outsider, didn't train here, worked as a junior doctor, then went out and did his MS in Madurai, and then joined back as Dr. Fenn's assistant. And this relationship of being his assistant blossomed into becoming finally Dr. Fenn's son. Dr. Fenn did not have a family. He was a bachelor. But Dr. Nair took care of Dr. Fenn like his father. And I know, I have not seen Dr. Fenn, but I remember a very powerful image I still have in my mind. And that is Dr. Nair pushing Dr. Fenn in a wheelchair after a below knee amputation for peripheral arterial occlusive disease. And here was this gentleman who was the head of the Department of Surgery at that time, taking Dr. Fenn in a wheelchair. And that to me was a story. That to me was the legacy I was going into. I think I still was maybe a junior surgeon or maybe finally a registrar, I don't remember. Then this legacy, Dr. Nair, we were three of us who were sort of mentored by him. Paul and I work here. Paul is currently the head of the department. And Dr. Ben, who was in the picture, has moved on to the US. But, the legacy didn't end with us. The legacy is now we've found our next generation. We've got Anish and Sean, who are confirmed faculty along with us, and others who are willing, who are joining us and are in the pipeline, Verghese and Supriya. And the legacy is that we are a people department. We are a department of endocrine surgery, we're a department of people. And we need to keep our people going, because without them, there's nothing else which can happen. And now we've come a long way. We've come a long way from those records which were written down on, on paper and maintained and followed up, and people went across the country to gather data. We've got a phenomenal clinical workstation, which is a hospital information system, and we have access to data. We can collect, we can mark patients, study, retrieve data for paper presentations, for research projects, and we have a plethora of patients who come to us, and that numbers keep us going. But it can also make us proud. But more importantly is the imaging, the quality of imaging we have, both structural and functional, which have added to our expertise in the specialty. And I must say, we work as a team, and we are as good as the team is. And so if anything good is in us, it's because of our sister specialties like radiology, nuclear medicine, medical oncology, radiotherapy, and all the allied specialties which we work with very closely. And this is an example of our own nuclear medicine department, without which we will not be able to do. And I remember Dr. Nair telling me, in the early days, there was no imaging. Endocrine surgery was a completely clinical diagnosis based on just findings of symptoms and signs. And he used to inject air into through the rectum into the retroperitoneum to actually create a shadow which can then pick up the adrenal tumors or retroperitoneal tumors. And that was how painstaking and difficult endocrine surgery was in the 60s, 70s, and maybe even early 80s. And so that reminds me that the lesson learned in this is legacy is not what I did for myself, it's what I'm doing for the next generation. And we are building a legacy, and we are baton bearers for a period of time, and this has to be passed on to somebody else. It's not mine. It's just mine for a time, and it's mine to be given to somebody else better than I received it, so that when they get it, they can build on where it goes, from where they received it. And that brings me to the league we aspire to be in. We aspire to be a department which is not to be number one in terms of statistics, but more in terms of an approach to life. And I'd like to just highlight a few of these activities which we do, which have made us the league we are in today. And that is, the most important is audit. And the audit is stringent, and audit is very important in our activity. And I must go by this quote, because cricket is a famous game for us. I mean, a very popular game with us. Surgery without audit is like playing cricket without keeping the score. And so true that you can continue to keep doing surgery without auditing yourself and believe you're good. And I let in on a secret. The surgeons often believe that they're better than they actually are. And that is a fallacy, and that is something which we need to get over from. And this is how we do it. We have a weekly audit. We write down the number of operations done. We take out our specialty operations like thyroid, parathyroid, adrenal. We have identified key performance indicators. We audit those indicators on week basis. We write down our calcium levels, we write down our PTH levels, and we find out, or we look and see, what did we do wrong? Why did this calcium drop? What can we do to get it better? And this data is collated into an annual data, which is now then presented annually to the Division of Surgery in CMC, and also to centers of excellence in the country, as well as overseas, to actually showcase the work we do. It is not to showcase in terms of showing off, but showcase to actually present ourselves as a department which actually does good work. And brings me to the often repeated quote says, practice makes you perfect. No, it does not make you perfect. It only makes you permanent. It's audited practices which make you perfect. And that's one big lesson which we've learned. And all our research projects, all our studies come out at that audit board. Then we decide on how can we improve hypocalcemia? How can we decrease our nerve injury rates? How can we do, whatever it is that audit will tells us, this is where you need to keep looking. And that brings me to research. And as I said, Research should be relevant to the patient who we are treating, relevant to making improvements for that patient who comes to us. It should refine the outcomes for that patient who comes to us. But most importantly, research does not come automatically. Research is something, as a clinician, we need to actually reorganize our schedules to fit in research. Otherwise, it will not happen. Teaching may happen, but clinical work will happen. We'll get overwhelmed by the clinical work and forget about the fact that you need to set aside time in our 24 hours to actually do research. And finally, good research will always generate questions to raise opportunities for further research. And I think that's the approach which we need to have. That's the approach which will help us grow as a department, as any individuals, practicing medicine. And that brings me to the story of why I went to University of Sydney Endocrine Surgery Oncology Unit. And this is in pursuit. For 3 years, I was asked a question by one of the doyens of endocrine surgery. He said, Deepak, you must pick up one thing. That is, you must identify some area you want to become good in. And that was Dr. Herb Chen, and he was from America. He was at that time at University of Wisconsin in Madison. And he said, you must identify one area. And in that pursuit of medullary thyroid cancer, I looked for best centers in the world. And Bruce Robinson, who was my dean, who was the dean of the University of Sydney, was my thesis guide, my PhD guide. And I worked with the endocrine surgery unit, Lee Delbridge, Stan Sidhu, Mark Sivak, and to me, life changed. Not only did it open up my eyes to what research did, but it also opened up a whole networking opportunity. The world opened out. The endocrine surgery colleagues world over became, first name friends where I could speak to and actually talk to. And as a result of that, my juniors have now got opportunities. Anish, who works with us, is now overseas in Melbourne, working in Sydney, working in an endocrine surgery unit there. But what is more important, this unit had never, I'm the second Indian who actually went into that department to work. And, but it has opened up doors for more people to go over the time. And in 2019, I had the opportunity, because of my networking and the fact that I had worked in a center like this, that I was a distinguished visitor to the College of Surgeons meeting for the endocrine section. And I remember one of the former faculty of Ludhiana attending that session and coming up to me at the end of that session. This talk was given there not in the form like it is today, but at least the topic was the same as what I did that day in my plenary talk. And so the lesson learned is never give up. Never give up on your dreams. Never give up on what you think you can achieve, and go after it, because you will achieve it. You open up the right doors at the right time. The second lesson which takes us into this league we are in today is a multidisciplinary approach. And I said that as I started, we are good as a team as we are. We need a good endocrinologist. We need a good radiologist. We need a good nuclear physician. We need a good radiation oncologist. We need a good medical oncologist. These are teams with individual departments we work with, but we are all we meet at least 3 to 4 times a week in different scenarios, in different settings, because we have approaches to various diseases. And we have these multidisciplinary meetings. And it's noticed that it's often a round table, not a table which goes with a leader at the head. Everybody is a leader in his own right, in his or her own right. And so we work together. But most important of all this is that we need to have good communication. And I'm so blessed that we work with people and as a team, and the blessing of the work we do here is because of the team approach we have. So in the lesson we learned in this whole process, in teamwork, there is not only, there is a doubling of your rewards, but there is a synergy and a quadrupling and multiplying of your reward, of the work, of the efforts you put in, and you become far better than when you work individually. And this is a collage of the department at various stages. And we are an extremely busy department. We see 20,000 patients in an OPD, in an annual audit. And the number of operations we do are also quite a bit, 25 to 30 operations a week. So the registrars are stretched. So they really work hard. and the expectations are high. But we make it a workplace. We make our workplace a happening place. We pepper it with outings, with beach trips, Mahabalipuram being close by, dinners together, retreats together, outings, just to make life good to the people who work with us. But the making the workplace a happening place is not. It's not natural. We tend to sort of cloister off and go off into our own personal world. But remember that the workplace is also your personal world. We often bring work home, but we need to bring home to the workplace too. We need to know each other's families. We need to know each other's children, and so we have always used this to become a happening place. But more importantly, the most important activity I have seen in my department, and I convey this to all in the department who work with us, is the weekly Bible study we have. This is a Bible study which is the chaplaincy runs, and there's a book, and it's a participatory Bible study. There's a chaplain, but the chaplain is a bystander, so to speak. And we are people, we would share stories, and we would share stories about what life lessons we have learned. But most importantly, we teach them why, or we impart in them why we do what we do. If we do well what we do, we are good professionals. But if we understand why we do what we do, we have turned medicine into a vocation. And when we know why we do what we do, then what we do, even if it is difficult, becomes easy to do. Because there's a purpose, there's a reason for doing it. And I must say that I really enjoy that Friday 11 o'clock time, where it's about 40 minutes, or half an hour to 40 minutes, where this is about sharing life's values, life skills. It's not, if all of this, or what we do from Monday to Saturday, has to be connected to the Friday 11 a.m. And that to me is very important. And that has been the story which we passed on to juniors. And I know an MCH candidate, when she finished with us a couple of years ago, she was one who's never trained here. She was not in CMC. She came and just did her MCH. She said at the end of 3 years, she said, "Sir, you've become my role model. You have become my my inspiration because of what you shared on Friday." And this individual was not a person from the Christian faith, but it is the importance of passing on values. Wherever you go, wherever you work, whatever you do, remember they need to take a bit of us with them. And I think that's a success story. And in giving, you will grow. You will multiply. And so that counterculture lifestyle is something we want people to know, that dead fish go downstream. It's easy to go downstream, but it's live fish which go upstream. And hence we need to keep changing direction and making sure that we teach people, be a part of the minority, not the majority. Be the voice for the voiceless. Take the road less traveled. God is our way maker, and we will be the salt, the light, and the city on the hill. And these are the lessons which come out of the Friday 11 a.m., which is passed on to others. And then hopefully this becomes their own story when they leave and they move on from us, or they stay on with us. And so I would say that this is something Dr. Nair taught me. And I somehow, by that slide, I think I've missed it or I've skipped it. But this talk is actually dedicated to two of my teachers. One is Dr. K. Shankaran, who's also on this meeting. He was a professor of surgery. But I'll let you in on a secret. I actually wanted to do general medicine. I wanted to become a physician. But his style of teaching, his approach to patients, and his approach to actually students made me change my career path from being a physician or an internist to becoming a surgeon. And the other person is Dr. Nair. Dr. Nair is also on this meeting, and I must say, this talk is dedicated to the two of them. And Dr. Nair was the one who said, I started as a student, then became his junior surgeon. Then I became, to me, he's my mentor. And he said, be people focused, be excellent. And being excellent is different from doing excellently well. in doing excellently well, excellence becomes a goal. And when excellence is a goal, you will tread over people, you will trample on people to reach your goal. But if excellence is an attitude, a second nature, a habit, then you will be willing to let people grow. And more importantly, be compassionate. And you are all part of a team. You're not individual islands, you're an archipelago. You need to work together, and you will see the beauty which comes out. And I always quote the example of, we are all individual pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. But when the jigsaw puzzle falls in its place, then the beauty of that puzzle is seen. It's no more a puzzle, it's solved. It's the beauty of whatever you stand for is then visible. So the small changes you make, the weekly audit, the Friday prayer, the time together in the MDTs, make big impact. Small changes make big impact. And this would be something which I would like to, would be the legacy we strive to be in, or the league we want to be in. Being excellent is being to say, yesterday I did my best. Today I'm at my best. Tomorrow I will strive to be better. And that's the league we would like to be. And excellence is an ongoing pursuit. It's not something which is over. And finally, I come to my personal story. And I must say that this is very personal. And I was wondering whether I should put this out, but I said, okay, I will. Because I think it's when you put yourself out, you make yourself vulnerable. And when you make yourself vulnerable, you can be, it can be looked in two ways. But I'll take that risk. And I must say that before I went to, before I became because I came into becoming a surgeon. During my undergraduate days, I was a very, very shy introvert person. I would be the last person who would come to any event, would be the first person to leave. I would possibly attend class faithfully, but I was never in the leadership league. As many youngsters would be identified, he is a potential leader. I would never have been picked up as a potential leader. I still remember suturing in the emergency department in Kottayam Medical College, and one of the assistant surgeons or the duty surgeons walked by and saw my hands and said, "You will never make it. You will never make a surgeon." At least he said you were not inborn surgeon, But to me, that was those are things which I've learned that I said, no, it can change. And one thing which I did, and maybe my parents instilled in me, and that was the habit of reading the book of Proverbs. And this is to those of you who are from the Christian faith will understand what I mean. And this book of Proverbs has, if you read this one chapter a day, you will read this 12 times a year. If you do this 5 to 7 years, and mark my words, you will not be the same. And this is my advice to all youngsters who come to me and ask, what do you think I should do to make some difference in my life? I said, read the book of Proverbs. Read the first 10 chapters talks about wisdom for young people. From the next 15 chapters talks about wisdom for all people. And finally, it talks about wisdom for leaders. But still, the book of Proverbs is something which actually changed my life, because of the habit I had of reading the book of Proverbs. And one such verse was trusting the Lord and fearing the Lord. And that has helped me sort of focus. That still continues to ring in my mind to say, you need to trust and fear the Lord, because there in that you will find that he will make your path straight. He will fulfill so many of your dreams which you have desired. And the other person who actually impacted me was Dr. G. George. He was an assistant professor in general medicine at that point of time. And as all 23-year-olds at that point, of 22, maybe, I was totally confused. I didn't know what to do. Whether I should, there was one group of people at that point of time, which is early 90s, would say, you can do all work without even doing a post-graduation. You don't need to do a PG. You can just become a physician, a surgeon, train, go to different places, learn the skill, and then go ahead and take care of patients, and go to the uttermost parts of India, go to missions. And there was a whole group of people who did that. There was another group which was going abroad and doing the USMLE, the PLAB, and then leaving the country. And I didn't know what to do. And he advised me very wisely. He said, do one thing. Every day at the same point of time on the day, apart from a quiet time or a morning time, so whatever you call it, he says, ask 3 questions. Where do you want me to go? What do you want me to do with my life? And what is my calling? This to me changed my life. At the end of 1 year, I did this 1 year during my internship. And at the end of 1 year, the answer came. I was called to be a role model to medical students. I don't know how it came, but an inner conviction came that I was called to be a role model to medical students. I was remember I'm studying in a government medical college, no clue where I'm going. CMC was not in my radar. Vellore was not even my picture. Ludhiana was even distant. And I didn't even think that what I would be, how would I be fulfilling this role? And I was trying to see whether I could get into the government system and, the rules and regulations and policies which government had laid down. It was very difficult for us to get into that. However, we were three of us who were studying. We were working very hard. Every day, at the end of the day, we would give each other topics and study that and then come back next day and teach each other. And we wanted to crack the entrance exam. We studied together. The gentleman on the left is the first on the panel is right now a flourishing nephrologist in Phoenix, Arizona. The other person, the middle the panel in the person in the middle panel is right now an internist in the UK, and the third was yours truly. And we, the three musketeers, were sort of looked at as people who would crack this entrance exam and get in for the PG. Both of them got, and the third musketeer failed. But the lesson I learned in that failure, what failure is not final and failure is not fatal. And in that pursuit, I then went back to Dr. G. George and asked him, what should I be doing? I've not made it. I've not gotten, and I don't see an option of getting into the government or to government medical college, and I don't want to go to private practice. Then he said, why don't you do one thing? Why don't you write a letter to Dr. Kurla Varki in Ottanchhatram and see what happens? And I said, okay, that's a good idea. I think as I was finishing my last few weeks of internship, I wrote an inland letter, half expecting a reply from him. And, I got to Dr. KV sent me a telegram, come immediately. Little did I know that he did this to anybody who applied to him, that the sense of urgency came to me. Gosh, I'm supposed to go to Ottanchhatram. And I went to my parents who were living in Bangalore at that point of time and said, I am going to Ottanchhatram. They had not heard of this place. They couldn't even pronounce this place. It was a tongue twister to them, but I still can't fathom how they allowed me to go on this road less traveled. I got onto this Mafusal bus in the Mafusal bus stand in Bangalore on a similar bus to heading to Ottanchhatram, which is a bus going to Palani. And I still believe that it is possibly the hand of God which worked for Maradona, which worked on my behalf, and allowing my parents to say yes for me to come to Ottanchhatram, and life changed for me. And Dr. KV, Dr. John, and the others who were seniors at that point of time, so many others were there. Taught me one thing. I can summarize this as the world says, get what you can what you get, sit on that can as long as you can. But the word says, and what is seen in the background is people who have been to Ottanchhatram would know this is a retreat center up on the hills, about 1 hour from ODC. In becoming the last, you become the first. In yielding, there's a reward. In surrender, there's victory. In dying, there is life. And that brought me to Vellore back for my PG. And I was on cloud 9. And when I received an inland letter from one of the mentors at Ottanchhatram, he says, what do you have that you did not receive? If so, why boast about it? To me, that was this is reality for me today, that there's nothing in my life which I can say is my own. Medicine has conquered many a malady. We've split the atom, we've spliced the gene. I've seen that in my own PhD. But there is one thing medicine cannot do, has not done, will not do, and that is decide on the next minute of your life and my life. And if so, why boast about it? Give off your best, thinking that this is their last day. And this brought me to a very busy life. To those who know Vellore, we are 2 registrars who are posted into one unit in general surgery, and for 3 years you work together. My colleague had to leave in the first year. And so I was basically doing 2 registrars work for the next 3 years. And this book was my life support. This is the ICMDA book. Many volumes have come after this. I hardly had a time to read, but it was about 2 minutes of reading. And then I would walk from my annex to the ward, which is P3 ward. And I realized that you can get quietness in busyness. You can get quietness on the move, and you can get quietness when there is no quiet. And PG time is difficult. And if it is difficult, please be assured this time will come to pass. And this is for a reason. PG time is, if it's not difficult, I think the PG time is not doing justice for what's happening in your life. And that brings me back to Ottanchatram after my stint in Vellore. And I decided I must do my own journal writing. So I had to work out the time, and we had a small boy at home by then. So I had to find a time when he would not trouble me. And I worked out my circadian rhythm, and I worked out what am I? I worked out that I'm a fowl. I woke up every morning at 4 a.m. and I read the Bible or read scripture, and I wrote down what I learned, and life changed. And I couldn't sleep the night before, wondering what I'm going to learn the next morning. That's how powerful it was. I used to wake up at 3 o'clock and 3:30, wondering when 4 a.m. would come. And that's where I understood my calling. And this is one of the verses which came. Some are called to be teachers and pastors. And to me, that teaching was that resonated for me. And to me, I was called to be a teacher. Now, the first call was to be a role model to medical students. The second call was still to be a teacher, but I still had not got a formal teaching job. But I used every opportunity for elective students who came and to others who came by to ODC to spend time with them and to teach them. And then I got an opportunity to come back to Vellore. And I was wondering whether I had made the right move of coming here. And I remember vividly that date, that was August 26th. Of 2002 when I joined. It was a Monday, and the Sunday before I attended the chapel, and it says, "He who began a good work in you will bring it to completion." And that to me was an affirmation of what I was going to be doing. And these are values Dr. Nair taught me. Be excellent, be humble, be willing, and be others oriented. And to me, this is life. And if all you do can sort of be clothed and enveloped in all of what I just said, in being excellent, in being humble, in being willing to help others, and being others oriented, life will be different. And that has made us part of the retreats, made us part of the life here of students and mentoring and teaching. All of it has become a day-to-day affair. But more importantly was 2 decades later, that is in 2016, when I received the Best Teacher Award, which was an affirmation of my call. I will not call it an achievement, because I will call it as an affirmation of the call I received in 2000 and something around 1999, 2000, when I received the call to become a teacher. And these are the words, I leave it for you to read. These are the words that the students penned, which is there on the plaque, which gives an idea of what actually they value. They don't value high concepts or knowledge which bloats up. Knowledge which bloats up, which only takes you for a fall, which puffs you and you fall. You have no pride. There's a fall which follows the pride. But if you are able to actually translate that to wisdom, you will actually change, and you will be an inspiration to many. And today, this is what I would say is the verse which actually drives me. What does the Lord require of you? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly. And this to me is my life story and life lesson which I have learned. And I must say, if I have to live life again, if I had to live that life again, would I live it any other way? The answer to me is no. I would live it exactly the way I've done it today. And I was listening to a TED talk by Rick Warren, and Rick Warren says he was watching the movie 10 Commandments, and God speaks to Moses and asks him, "What is in your hand?" He says, "It's your staff. It's my staff." And staff represents identity, staff represents income, staff represents influence. Medicine is our staff. And if you are willing to render, if you're willing to yield, if you're willing to become the last, I'm sure you will become the first. And if you're willing to die, there is life. and medicine will become a blessing. And medicine as a calling is be excellent, be patient-centric, be compassionate, be others-oriented, and believe that this is worth it. And this is the legacy, which is the people who have gone through my department, and this is the league in which we are. And I must acknowledge that all of these individuals who are here, who have come and gone through this department. And finally, our own families, the 6 of us and our spouses and our children, and they all are all part of this whole story. And life lessons are ongoing. Legacy is growing. That is more important. Thank you.